and welcome back to the Mystery Theory. Today I am re-recording the part 3 of Scott's and Laci Peterson's case, and I already had it, but as I mentioned recently on the community tab, I had some trouble sharing it on YouTube. So today I decided to start from where we left on part 2, which was heading for the trial of Scott Peterson. If you're new here and you're wondering why I'm whispering, just Google the third word in the title and you'll realize why. And if you want to watch this series from the beginning, listen to them. I'll have a playlist pop up on the top of the screen right now, as well as in the description box down below. I am currently in Utah while I'm doing some doctor visits and some things I had to schedule before moving. So if you hear background noise and cars and people talking, they are camping, so excuse them. Hopefully it's early enough that we won't have much of that. Also, before I get started, I've mentioned that I uploaded an unsolved mystery to my Patreon page about Beatriz Mota, and I mentioned that her case was the John Benet Ramsey of Brazil, still unsolved. For those of you who are there on Patreon and are not receiving notifications, it's there. It's on the main page, so check it out. And if you want to support the channel, the podcast, the whole thing, I'll have a link in the first comment pinned down below where you can go and check it out. Decide for yourself if you want to join. Now, let's talk about how hard it was to get a fair trial for Scott Peterson. I would like to make some kind of a poll, and if they still have it available, it will pop up on the top of the screen and you can vote there. If it doesn't, it's probably not available. I heard that they were going to take it away. So please take the time now to pause this video and let me know up until this point. Do you believe that Scott Peterson, that there's any slight chance that he's innocent? Or do you believe up until this point that he is 100% guilty? I would like to know because of the kind of information I'm gonna be sharing with you today. So I love to know before I share that information, and that way we can kind of compare notes in the end. Again, we're starting with a hard case for a special kind of jury. By the time that they started to get ready for the trial, picking a juror was a his affair. And it was going to be hard to find somebody who would keep an open mind about a guy that everything points back at him, that he looks guilty because of his character. Because that's what the media was portraying at the time. They were portraying him as a monster. I am not saying that he isn't or that he is. I am telling you the atmosphere that was at the time, especially in the area. Most people wanted to burn this guy alive. In the process of getting a juror, they were those imposters. They're called stealth jurors, and they describe a stealth juror as the kind of juror that comes with his own agenda. So what they do basically is they lie their way in. Like, oh no, I haven't seen much of this case on TV. Or, I can definitely keep an open mind about this. And when they get picked, they carry on with their initial motive for being a juror, which in this particular trial, they had already made up their minds about Scott and were not open to the idea of listening, but actually convict him. A clear example was this juror lady who, in the questioning to trying to determine if she was, the kind of juror that they wanted, she mentioned that she wanted to be a juror because her father made a convincing argument about the possibility of Scott being innocent. Even though the media coverage was pointing to all the circumstantial evidence that pointed back to Scott, she was picked. But later on, they found out that she was basically trashing Scott on the internet. Needless to say, she was dropped. Now, it took a long time. I think in total was 9 weeks to go through the process of finding people with an open mind, or what they believe was an open mind, and not already convicted Scott in their heads. They had to interview hundreds of people. Now, when they were picked, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. I mean, they had a lot on their shoulders. Was he innocent? Was he guilty? Did he deserve the death penalty? You have to understand that all these things they had to think about and keep in mind as they were opening this trial. And interesting enough, this is something that was asked in another, I think it was in part 1. Somebody mentioned recently about, or asked if they were sequestered, which means that they put the jurors in a hotel and they keep them away from the media and what people are sharing basically everywhere. But in this case, they wouldn't be sequestered because it was a mix of money and logistics this trial was going to be super long, months, so it was not practical to have to take all these jurors, keep them in a hotel room, pay for, their missing days of work, and overall it was an inconvenience, I believe, according to what I read. Now, the trial started on June 1st, 2004, and the prosecution's opening statements. And with that, a lot of information that authorities had been keeping a secret for the trial. Just so you get an idea, it was a media circus. Somebody's tired. He's always in the background. The media was all there. There were hundreds of tents of different media outlets ready for this trial to start. For the Petersons and the Rojas, it was a tragedy. It was a hard time, maybe the hardest, but for the public, this was, I don't know, quote unquote, entertainment. Now, the first day, the main point for that particular day was for the prosecution to say, I think this is how things happened. And it's the beginning of presenting evidence that would develop throughout the trial. So their theory at this point is that Scott had killed Laci the night before. Then he cleaned up everything, and then the next morning, early in the morning, he decided to put her body in his vehicle to get rid of it. That's what the prosecutor said in a few words. The motive, well, the prosecution explained that Scott did not want to be a father, that he was a cheater who was having an affair while his wife was pregnant and really close to delivering the baby, and that instead of choosing divorce, he chose to kill her. However, I have to be the devil's advocate here and say that being unfaithful is more common than it should be. So the prosecution wasn't proving him as a murderer, but somebody who wanted to have an open relationship, that his wife didn't want to have an open relationship, so instead he was cheating on her. The next day, it was the defense opening statements. I have to say that this lawyer is super confident, but not cocky. He is like, there's something about him, but it was way more convincing when you listen to him than the prosecutor. Okay, that just first started. But in the beginning, he said something like, I know you're not going to like Scott, but I'm here to prove his innocence. I will prove his innocence. This lawyer's name is Grog or something like that. And he was so confident that he started by exposing Scott in a lie. But it was more Scott lied particularly about the day that his wife disappeared. Nobody does that, right? Well, Scott initially said that he and Laci were watching a Martha Stewart show in a cooking segment kind of thing. It's something about lemon meringue or something like that. Now, they watched the episode and that didn't happen that day. That episode was aired on a different day and not on Christmas Eve. So the prosecution exposed, I guess, his honesty. As like, listen, I am helping the prosecutor here by telling you he's lying. But actually what he was doing is kind of fact checking the prosecutor and exposing what kind of a crappy job they've done this far to investigate. He also mentioned that police should have evidence, right? I mean, even if Scott took the time to kill his wife the night before and clean the entire house, it wouldn't make sense that he didn't miss a spot. He also mentioned hundreds of bags of evidence that police took from the Peterson's house, but nothing was useful because they couldn't find any kind of physical evidence. By now, you know it. There was doubt in the jurors' faces. The defense would take the time to destroy the prosecution opening statement, and I am saying it confidently. They destroyed the prosecution's statements the day before, and they portray themselves as the honest side by catching Scott in a lie. Then it was time to call witnesses, and they start with the prosecution side. But usually they have different witnesses. The prosecution and the defense, they all have different witnesses. They are allowed to question, the different witnesses, no matter if they brought them in. But they have those key people that would prove something that they are trying to prove. So, the first court day of testimonies, the computer forensic analyst who was, taken there by the prosecution explained in detail the internet use in the Petersons' home and at Scott's warehouse. He explained in detail what happened at what time and everything. Remember that the prosecution was stating that Laci died the night before. They didn't say how. They didn't say where. But they did say that it happened the night before. Now, the defense lawyer questions this expert, and the expert mentions that there was some kind of a search about a sunflower patterned umbrella. said, I have no way to prove that he didn't mention this to his lawyer. I just have to throw it out there because that's what the Petersons said. According to my research, the prosecution kind of changed everything, and we're like, maybe, yeah, okay, there's a possibility that she was killed that morning too. But I don't understand why. I'm sure there's something legally of relevance there, but I don't get it because who can prove that that was Laci? Yeah, she loved sunflowers, and it was, ladies' clothing, so I get it. But could that be him doing it? In my humble opinion, 100%. It could have been done by anybody. So let's go through the almost evidence, because they had no actual physical evidence. People were all over. Lots of rumors, fueled by the media. Maybe he strangled her. But how can they prove that? I mean, after the state that they found the bodies, it was just impossible to prove that. But they started talking about something that happened when they searched Scott's office, and they found cement markings on the floor. When the police asked Scott, why? Yeah, that there. He said that he did, that he made a concrete anchor for his boat. But on a phone call recorded on December 30th, 2002, the police recorded this conversation where the officer asked, you made one anchor? And he says, yes. Apparently, there were 3 other markings pointing to 4 anchors being made. When they asked him, what did he do supposedly with the rest of the cement bag, because he said he only made 1 and the cement bag was not there. He said he dropped it by his driveway in a spot where it gets very muddy. Later on, reporters checked, and you could see that he did put a dry cement bag. He poured it on top of the mud on the side of his driveway. What's up with that horn? I swear, they know I'm here. Okay, so let's talk about the prosecution mess, okay? Because their whole thing was that he wasn't acting like a worried husband, okay? So, police were starting to testify of that. When they were called to testify, they were like, this guy looked very cold. He was not asking the typical questions of a worried husband. But even though they were testifying to this, because of the good job of the defense, Scott was looking more and more innocent each day. The defense made it seem like those testimonies were based on the idea that the police believed that he did it from the beginning. They believed that. And of course, that was what everyone was hearing on the media. It was, the defense stated that Laci Scott's warehouse. Let's give you a simple example. And then the next day, the defense they brought this lady that apparently she owned, or she had a. Is that a boat? For goodness sake, what is that? Or is that a truck? Seems like a boat. Are you kidding me? Goodness gracious. I'm sorry. So the defense stated that Laci never went to Scott's warehouse, which I found very weird that they mentioned that. They also said that she didn't know that Scott bought a boat. That he was basically the only one that knew about it. The next day, though, they bring a witness, and this was a. You have to be kidding me. They brought this witness that she said that the day before that Laci disappeared, she was at Scott's warehouse, and that she remembers seeing Laci because she was super pregnant and she needed to go to the bathroom. So this lady let her go into her bathroom at that warehouse thing. So in the defense side, this is proving that she was at the warehouse and she knew about the boat, and that maybe the prosecution was hiding out information or omitting testimonies, because they did know about this lady that said that she was there the day before she disappeared. Which, let me make a quick pause right there. Isn't it possible that she went and was waiting in the car, and then all of a sudden she had to go to the bathroom? That's another possibility. Maybe she ran into this person, knew that they had no bathrooms in, the area, and maybe they shared a bathroom with the different warehouses. I am not sure, but it's kind of interesting to know that the prosecution was kind of taking it according to what I've seen. But isn't also possible that after that Laci disappeared and not disappeared the next morning, as Scott said? I'm gonna leave it there. The unpopular juror number one, because there were many of them, but by June 23rd, 2004, the trial was already on week 4. And it started with Justin Falconer, which, they have numbers. He was juror number 5. Apparently, the guy had opinions about witnesses. And he also had a very unpopular vote because he was questioning the prosecution. And listen, you can question the prosecution. That's why you are there. You're supposed to see it from both sides. The problem is you cannot use your judgment to convince other people. You have to be based on evidence and what is presented to you, and not your feeling, your thoughts, your hunches. You have to listen. You're entitled to your opinion, but you cannot try to convince somebody else. So he was reported, and soon enough he was out. He became the news media puppet, though. He was saying what the media they were suspecting. It was not going well for the prosecution. Now Scott Peterson had a rival, really. Because I can assure you that this guy was, at the time, the second most hated guy in America. I mean, nobody liked him or what he was saying. But it was creating such a hostile environment, and it was getting people he was so mad that, he was a popular guy to have on TV because of the controversy. But now it was time for the prosecutor to show Scott's character, true character. I swear that must be a boat. You gotta be kidding me. There's nothing this big around here. Anyways, at the time of trying to kind of show Scott's character, it was seen already by the jurors that Scott looked emotionless. It seemed like he had no feelings. He seemed like a cold guy. When the pictures of the bodies were presented, this is for both Laci and Connor, he was putting his head down. He didn't want to look at those pictures. So we really don't know if he's a different kind of guy that, he expresses his feelings in a different way. I don't know if I'd want to see those pictures. God forbid anything, like that happen. But I don't think that even, if I wasn't in his position, like if it was a family member that I had to look in a picture and see how they were looking when they were found, I don't think I could do that. Even my pets, when they died in the past, I always have to have somebody who does, the bearing for me, because I cannot take it. I think it goes back to one of my, what was it? It was my grandfather's funeral, and I remember somebody saying, kiss your grandpa goodbye. Gosh, I shouldn't have done that. Kind of ruined the whole thing for me. But what I'm trying to say is, maybe Scott didn't want to look at the pictures because of the effect of seeing his family that way. Not saying he's innocent or guilty. I'm saying, that we all deal with death in a different way. Trying to do better with that myself, but I didn't think that proved anything, to be honest. Yes, he did look emotionless, cold, I agree, but I think that the fact that he didn't want to look at the pictures could have been something completely different. And Amber Fry was the one that was going to help, establish the kind of person that Scott was. You have to remember that the police had recorded conversations with this, between Amber and Scott. And one of the recordings, the one on January 1st, pretty sure if you know about this case, you know the call that I'm talking about, where he was supposedly grieving his wife, and it was in some kind of a vigil for his wife and son. But he was talking to this girl about what she was wearing. Sexy black pants. I mean, what concern was just the beginning. You either believe the circumstantial evidence that the prosecution presented up until this point, and you mix it with the inappropriate behavior of a cheater and a liar, and you convict him, or you go by hard evidence and put aside your feelings. So at this point, I believe that the prosecutor was like, let's hope that Amber Fry convinces the jury, right? The defense would argue that, listen, you're gonna bring Amber Fry. Who cares? They've seen each other 4 times. And that sounds very discrediting, in my opinion. If somebody tells me that, it's like, oh, you're making a big deal in trying to bring a witness, a character witness that only's been with him 4 times. But that was over a 6-week period, and they were not living, super close. So I think that 4 times over a 6-week period, for the circumstances that they were under, it was more than enough. And again, Amber was going to be a character witness, which means that she didn't see it happen. She didn't hear from him, saying, I did this to my wife or whatever. She was there to tear his reputation apart. Not on purpose, of course, but, not over exaggerating, but she was asked to be there to tell their story. And I'm gonna go through everything on Amber's side, but before I dive into that, there's a few things I have to mention, because I think they're very relevant to, you either believe Amber Fry or you don't. Most people did anyways, but here the defense wanted to paint her in a really bad way. Even though the strongest piece of evidence were those taped conversations. But the defense had to judge her character, to make her seem, or to discredit her, I should say. And they used that she was a massage therapist. Yeah, I'm sorry. I take it for what it is. I don't think it has anything to do with that. But I think it's more of what people think of massage therapists. I don't know. They also used she was dating a married man card, which she didn't know. And they also mentioned that, tried to discredit her by saying that she didn't date the guy for that long. They also insinuating that she wanted revenge because she was an angry, girl, that she realized that her guy was actually married, and that's why she decided to open her mouth. They kind of tried to paint her in the light of she's an angry and hurt person. You should have kept your mouth shut. There were some photos that were leaked. Her face was all over the place. And they were not, only those pictures that you remember with her in the red dress on a Christmas party. No, these were kind of sexy photos that really painted her in a way almost like, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying what people said at the time, like a girl who was not a prostitute, but somebody who was playing the game, okay? And I think massage therapist with sexy pictures that really was not the smartest kid in town. I guess people took time out of their day to judge her, and I guess if you judge her, you have to judge Scott's taste, right? Because Laci and Amber could have been complete opposites. I am not arguing that. But what I'm saying is, they were both picked by the same guy. It's not about them, it's about him. And I don't know, she was a different Laci. I don't know if they were opposites, and not only in the way, their lifestyles, but the way that they looked. One was blonde, the other one was not, and different body types, and but at the end of the day, it's not about Amber, and it's not about Laci. In the affair stand, nothing to do with what happened to Laci and Connor. All I'm saying is that Scott was the one that promised to be faithful to Laci when they got married. He was the one that made a commitment to Laci, not Amber. He was choosing to put himself in the situation with Amber. He was not put into this situation. He chose to be in it. I mean, this guy is a pathological liar. That's what we know about him. But in the last episode in this series, we're gonna start with what truly happened with Amber. We're gonna talk about a timeline of events between Scott and Amber, and we're gonna go into details that maybe will tell or will paint a better picture of what really happened. And we will close this series with a lot of new developments. In this case, recent developments in this case. But I'm gonna ask you to keep an open mind. In this last episode, I'm gonna share with you, and I guess I'm asking you what the court was asking of the jurors, to keep an open mind to the new evidence released in this case, to new witnesses, to new things that were surrounding this almost perfect suburban neighborhood that they painted the picture that this was. Even though I'll share with you a little bit more about Modesto, California, to close this case. I always try to put myself on both sides, the victim and the person that is accused of committing the crime. And I often see it as if, what if this was somebody I knew, like, I don't know, a family member that is accused of committing this horrible crime, and there's not enough physical evidence to convict them but judge, his character. What if really it's like you're watching a mystery movie and somebody dies, but they skip the part where, the killer enters the room and kills the person. So you have to continue the entire movie and be guessing what really happened. But really, it's because you're missing that scene. You're missing that part of the movie that showed you, okay, that night it was dark. Nobody was at the house but this person and this other person. And all I'm saying is you don't have to see who did it, but if there's enough evidence, or if there's enough witnesses, or if there's enough details for you to go through, that can really help you paint a better picture with the evidence that is presented, either if it is physical evidence or circumstantial evidence, but not presenting the totality of evidence or mention of witnesses that really were not called to the stand. It impacts what the jurors decide. And yes, it is true that some things judges decide not to admit in court. But most of the new things that I will share in this last episode, it's going to be about stuff that the judge didn't say it wouldn't be admissible. It is papers that were lost or scanned, not scanned, I should say. So there's a physical paper copy, but it's not in the computer. There are some witnesses that in the area that were not even called in to testify because of one witness that kind of threw their testimonies away. And it's very interesting. I am not to convince you, I'm not here to convince you that Scott Peterson is guilty, and I am definitely not here to convince you that he is innocent. I have my own theory that I'll share with you, but in the end, I think it's only fair that I present to you that evidence that was never presented to the jurors and that was omitted in court, which doesn't really make sense either in my head, because I think that even if the prosecution tried to omit this for fitting their own narrative, the defense would be smart enough to find them. And this lawyer, he's a good lawyer, good defense lawyer, and he has enough power to convince a jury, especially in a way that others can't. So why didn't he find this evidence while the trial was going on? There must be some kind of an explanation that I couldn't find or I don't have access to. But it's really, the Petersons are trying to say that the police was hiding this information, even though if the defense lawyer wanted to find this information, he would have been able to get it. It's not like they were keeping this information hidden in the, prosecutor's basement, locked. No. However, yes, the police didn't present it, but why didn't the defense lawyer present it himself? Well, I'm gonna leave you with that, and then I'll come back and I'll do the final part in the series. I am thinking that if I have people say that because of the playlist, I don't know. I was asked to do that with other cases, so I